Hello Kitty, me gusta mi titties, me gusta mi booty. Hoy me tomo selfie con filtro Hello Kitty.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of Dangerous Games Podcast. As always, I am here with my beautiful, stunning, lovely, gorgeous co-host, Mrs. Squirts Sarah, the original Mrs. Breaker, and I am Courtney from Reckless Cards. We are excited to have you here. We appreciate you joining us for another episode. Today is a Courtney-centric episode, and I'm going to be taking it way back before the Roaring 20s to the early 1900s, like 1900s. Are you excited about this?
I am. I'm kind of nervous. Like, I don't know what goes back that far.
So this one is not a murder case.
Oh.
This one is a robbery.
Okay, Dr. Evil.
$1 billion.
Oh, let's do it.
Now, this episode is about the life and crimes of Jerome Willis Downs, aka Red Downs. And for this episode, I brought out the one and only T206 card that I own. It is an SGC2, and it is of Mr. Downs himself. He's a good-looking dude, man. He's a good
From like the 1900s, yeah. I mean, that's probably like Nike today.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He lived an interesting life, and I'm going to tell you all about it. And he didn't murder anyone, and so it's a little bit more lighthearted today, not as like
gruesome.
No, nothing gruesome. No, I mean, it's sort of tragic. It's quite tragic, but nobody was murdered, so that's a positive spin on this. Yes. So we'll start with his early life. There's not a lot known about him because obviously it was the 1900s. I was saying that I had found I subscribed to newspapers.com. I highly recommend that if you're into like weird stuff like this, you do sign up for that, because I have access now to like newspapers from all over the country, as many as were printed, and it is the coolest thing. I found you find so much more information than just like Googling someone's name.
Yeah,
there's like articles written about them and all sorts of like fun stuff. So Downs was born August 23rd, 1883 in Neowa. I know I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Neowa, Iowa. His father, Willis Downs, was 31, and his mother, Emily Jane Sexton, was 28. And like in 1883, that feels kind of old to be having a baby.
No, I agree.
He did have one older sister named Jessie May, and she was 8 years older than him. Whoa. And that's really all that I know about his family. I tried to find, I went on like Ancestry.com,
right, and
that's even how I found his sister's name and his parents' name, because like even his Wikipedia page does not have anything about his family.
Weird.
So not much more is known about his family or childhood, and he never had any children of his own. At the age of 20 in 1903, he played for several minor league baseball teams, including the Fort Scott Giants, the Guthrie Senators, and the Topeka White Sox. In 1906, at 23 years old, he married Bessie McNair on September 18th. So that was cool. He was married. They never had children though, which again, not super common back then. Mm-hmm. In 1906 was a busy year for Red, as he also led the Western Association with 8 home runs, leading to his signing with the Detroit Tigers. Now, you're not a big baseball person, right, Sarah? So do you know what the Western Association is in baseball, minor league baseball? It is the name of 5 different leagues formed in American minor league baseball during the 19th and 20th centuries. And it was mainly like Midwestern teams. Downs had a batting average of 227, so in 241 major league games, and played second base for the Detroit Tigers. In 1907 and 1908. Now, as a Chicago person, Jeremy's a Cubs fan, those years are pretty memorable for us because those were the 2 years that the Cubs won the World Series, 1907 and 1908. And that was their last win until, 2016. So very memorable dates for us. At 25 years old, he had won 2 American League pennants with the Tigers, because they won both of the pennants in 1907 and 1908 when he played with them. And that's a big deal. And he even played in 2 of the World Series games against the Cubs in 1908, and he scored a run and he got an RBI, which that's a big deal to say that you did that in a World Series.
Right.
Detroit ended up losing both games, obviously, to the Cubs. So, but he still got to play in a World Series, and not very many people can say that. So after losing 2 World Series to the Chicago team, Downs was acquired by another team in the Windy City, my personal favorite Chicago team, the White Sox, in 1909. Downs got onto the train, headed to Chicago from Detroit, getting ready to go for spring training, and then he got off the train and never got back on board. He did not end up playing a single game with the White Sox. He just got off the train.
Weird.
Yeah. Some of this is going to make sense when we get a
Yeah.
little further on. You're going to be like, oh, that makes sense now. I get it. So he ended up back in the minors with the Minneapolis Millers, which I think might be this team that he's on in this thing. 'Cause he's wearing.
Look at the bottom. Does it say on the bottom, or is it just
It just says Downs Minneapolis, and he's wearing Minneapolis in the
probably?
picture.
That's cool.
Yeah. So he ended up playing in the minors with the Minneapolis Millers for the 1909 season. And he was offered a chance to play in the majors again with the Senators in Washington. But he decided that that was not worth his time because it was like all the way far away on the other side of the country. And they were only presumably going to have him play a couple games. So he was like, he's like, basically, I'm not
Right.
my whole
Why
life
waste his time?
all the way out there.
Yeah.
So he did sign on with another crew of Senators, still in the minor leagues, from Columbus, so Ohio. But he played really well with them, and then he was drafted to the Brooklyn Dodgers. But ultimately played 9 games with them. Now, a lot of people but a lot of younger people probably don't know that the Los Angeles Dodgers were actually the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Yep. I do know that for not knowing crap. I do know that.
Some people don't. So it's a cool little thing. And he played on the Dodgers when they were in Brooklyn.
That's cool.
So in 1912, Downs ended back up in Chicago, well, where he was supposed to be, but with the Cubs, his rivals from 1907 and 1908, and he played shortstop with them, second base, shortstop, and he was reported to be a good addition to the team by Sporting Life magazine in 1912. They said he's good, he's filling in great, and he can bat a little, which would hopefully his batting average was better than it was in the minors because that wasn't that great. By 1913, Downs had played all over the Midwest for a slew of teams, and his major league career was coming to an end. Like, he was back and forth between the minors and majors, but he would never play for a major league team again. Remember in the 1900s, baseball players, even professional baseball ones, were not celebrities that they are now. It's like a lot of them had jobs, and it wasn't like a very overly lucrative career.
Right.
Most players that had second jobs, and the average salary for a baseball player in like the early 1900s was $2,000 a year. This is equivalent to about $68,000 in spending power now, which isn't bad, but not nearly comparable to the millions and millions that they make.
Yeah.
It was actually not until Babe Ruth in the 1920s that ball players became celebrities. And to be fair, Babe Ruth wasn't, just a ball player. He was also a movie star, a vaudevillain performer, a barnstormer, a pitchman for every conceivable product that was given to him. He's like, yes, I will sell that. I will make money from that. Give me everything. And he was also a nationally syndicated magazine columnist. I don't know if you knew that, but Babe Ruth was a writer, which I found interesting. And I was doing a little research about 1900s baseball because it was intriguing. And
it's so different than what's today. I mean,
they don't have to do all that stuff if they don't want to. They make enough money. And they're not like smoking and drinking beer and running the base. It was
like all the rest of them. Yeah.
And like that kind of lifestyle, that like drinking and like not having to be like the most physically fit, I feel like was the downfall of a lot of these guys. It feels like it maybe certainly was for Downs. Downs was none of those things. He did not do all of that. He wasn't making all of that kind of money. But in 1913, 13, he headed down to California. So he finally did decide to move across country to beautiful, sunny San Francisco to play for the Seals, which was a minor league team. He played on the team all the way until 1916, and he won a PCL championship with the team. So the Pacific Coast League, he was with the
That
West.
I do know.
Yeah, so he won that, and in 1917 he managed the team and led them to another PCL pennant. So that's really cool. And then July of that year, he resigned from the Seals and signed on with the LA Angels, where he won another and his final PCL pennant. So this is where, remember, I was talking about like the lifestyle of baseball players and their drinking and partying, and carousing, and it wasn't like it is now. It was around this time that Downs is rumored to have like had a pretty serious drinking problem. He later somewhat confirms that, and it's pretty solid that he had a drinking problem, because he makes a statement later on to the LA Times, and you're like, ooh, somebody, like, some of his choices weren't the best coming up. Like, getting off the train to go to the White Sox just randomly for no reason. That didn't make it like, okay. But as of 1924, Downs was still active in baseball, and he helped organize the Professional Ball Players of America. I think this is so cool. The organization carried on for a number of years, assisting ill and needy former ball players. And Downs served as the director of that organization through 1925. So he helped set it up.
Wow.
And then it basically helped because, again, they didn't make all that kind of money, and some of them had problems. And so, it was the middle of the 20s. So this was like very like roaring 20s era. And these people maybe were suffering a little. Maybe he saw a little bit of himself in these players that were like down and out. So in 1929, as the economic expansion of the roaring 20s came to an end and the stock market crashed, the Great Depression put a stranglehold on the country. It hit Downs really, really hard, and he was severely down on his luck. Maybe his pride prevented him from actually seeking help from his own organization, but he probably should have, because his next choice would change his entire life, and not in a good way. In 1932, while at a party at the historic Biltmore Hotel, you know about the Biltmore, right? That's like a super famous hotel. He was there for a party for New York's Giants player. Downs apparently spotted a fashionable and exclusive jewelry shop. This is what allegedly sparked his brilliant and nefarious plot. You know what's going to happen.
It's getting slipped.
It's getting. So weeks later, on March 19th, 1932, Downs, who is now 49 years old, and another man named Edward Carlson entered the jewelry store that Downs had spotted, and they were armed. The jewelry store manager and employees were removing jewelry from a window safe when the two men entered brandishing guns. The men forced rubber balls into the mouth of the staff members and restrained them with cords. After securing the staff, Downs and Carlson stripped the entire store, showcases, vault, everything. They even took a ring off the manager's finger before leaving.
Wow.
Yeah. From professional baseball player to armed robber. That's insane to me.
Yeah, it is.
All told, the bandits made off with $52,000 in gems, gold, and this is a direct quote from the newspaper at that time, loot.
I know,
loot. That's worth approximately $1.13 million.
Hey, Dr. Evil.
In today's economy. That's crazy.
Wow. That is
$52,000. Okay. I was like, damn. When I read that.
Much.
Well, and then like in all the articles, they just say $52,000. So when I like did the conversion, I was like, holy, like they must have been like, woo, like 52,000. Only 9 days later, 9 days, on March 28th, Downs, Carlson, and a third man named Eugene Jones, who was only 22 years old, were arrested at a hotel in downtown Fresno. Downs and Carlson both confessed to the robbery, and Jones was arrested for possession of some of the goods. Like, he had them. So maybe he drove them or was an accomplice in some way.
Wow.
According to Downs, the plan was to wait until the heat died down and then sell all the stuff, Gotcha. But the manager of the store recognized Downs. He knew who he was. So all the stolen merchandise ended up being found in that Fresno hotel's basement, buried like pirate treasure.
Hey,
So
that sounds like fun.
they like took all of it down there and buried it in the basement. They're like, we're gonna get away with this for
It
sure.
went from 56,000 to negative.
I'm like a famous local baseball playing celebrity, and these people I do
You're
wear masks.
stupid.
And these
You're
people are
so
backward.
dumb. Who just said that's a good idea?
Man.
Goodness.
So Down he ended up being convicted of first-degree robbery and sentenced to 5 years to life.
Well, what? How do you go from 5 to life?
It was the 1900s, but he ended up being paroled though after only 3.5 years and returned to Iowa.
They have parole back then?
I guess. So of the robbery, Downs was quoted in the quote that I was talking about. He was quoted in the Los Angeles Times newspaper, March 29th of 1932, as saying to the police detective when he was arrested, "Liquor has put me out for the 3rd time. First, it caused me to lose a place in the big league, where I might, by this time, have been a successful manager. The 2nd time, it threw me out at the Coast League, and now it's got me into this jam." I'm like, no, sir, you sort of made all of those choices. That was all you.
Mm-hmm.
You made those choices.
Oh my gosh.
So, sadly, liquor ended up being the real, bane of Down's life, because in 1939, at age 56, only 7 years after the robbery and a mere 2.5 years after his release, Downs died of cirrhosis of the liver in Council Bluffs, Iowa. He was buried in Neoa Township Cemetery in Neoa, Iowa, where he was born.
Wow. This man was he just went from left to right real quick.
There's just, I don't know. There wasn't a lot about his upbringing. So who knows, how he grew up or
True.
whatever, and of the times, it's like, who becomes this is why Prohibition did not work, because the man became a terrible alcoholic in the 20s. It was the 20s. That was the height of Prohibition.
Who in the world is like, hey, this guy's so famous, let's go rob a jewelry store and they won't notice us.
Yeah.
They won't know who we are.
You have all these people living this life and it's free and easy, and it's the 20s, and he's a professional baseball player, and I'm sure he felt like he was sort of a big shot. To drink your life away like that, though.
Literally.
That's the part for me that was so sad. It was and he even says it. He's like, I ruined my career with the major leagues. I got even kicked out of the minor leagues because of it. And it feels like he was trying to turn himself around by making that organization for, bad baseball players who were down on their luck or ill or whatever.
But how is he going to fund that? By robbing places?
Well, he wasn't even working for them by the time that he did this. He was fully. He did that for a year.
And to go from major to minor, which I don't know.
He made that choice too. So to me, it was definitely an alcohol issue, which is sad to see. And then you see guys like Babe Ruth who are flaunting, drinking and carousing.
Or Darryl Strawberry, who I did last week. Where it was he was bringing it to the clubhouse. It's just, it is very sad. And
see it, it's the life of excess. Even back then, when they were making that kind of money, you see, Babe Era was in his timeline. They played, so you see someone like him becoming famous and doing all of these things, and I'm sure there's a sense of
jealousy,
or this is just how you behave. So I want to tell a little bit of a cool story about this card. So this card, I went to Culture Collision, in Atlanta, and I had met a man there who sells primarily cool weird story cards. That's his bag. And actually I told him I'd like to bring him on to be a guest at some point, because he's just he has a plethora of knowledge about these weird old crimes from vintage days. But he was telling me about that he had this card, and I was like, oh my God, I really want one. And he's like, I only have one, it's on eBay. So I started following his eBay. I found the card. I was bidding on it. I fell asleep and I missed it by $1. I lost the bid by $1. So fast forward, like I text him because I got his number at the show, and I'm like, oh, I missed that card by $1. So I'm following a bunch of other ones on eBay, and like a week later, he messaged me. He's like, hey, the guy never paid. Do you want it? And I was like, yes, I do. So I paid for it, and he sent it that day, and now I have it. So
that's freaking awesome. I like cards like that. Maybe I'll do a guy on here or girl that will have a card, but I haven't done anybody yet that, and the next one I'm doing isn't got a card either. But I think that's really cool. I think that kind of brings it back to what our foundation is of wanting, how it correlates with the card company or card and hobby and sports. And I think that's really freaking cool. Honestly, I'm a little jealous.
Our Dangerous Games Crime Macabre collection is growing. I will post them. My goal is every episode, everything that we do, I want to have a card to go with it. And I'm just going to create this like really cool collection of these people who we are talking about and how they kind of shaped, now they've shaped a collection and they shaped the face of the sport. I appreciate you for joining me today. And I hope you guys all found this story really
very
as intriguing as I did. And I'll probably do a couple more of these older stories because this is that's like my wheelhouse. It's what I find really interesting, like the older cases, these athletes that didn't have it like the ones now do, like, and not the
voice to the old.
Yeah. So until next time, thanks for joining us, and
yes, thank you.
Please like, subscribe, and follow if you want to hear some more crazy crimes from sports and athletes.
Yes, please do.
All right, have a great day. Bye.
Me gusta mi booty, me con un selfie con filtro Hello Kitty.